Most people struggle to land one good job. Our guest today, he figured out how to land and keep 3 of them at the same time, all remote, all legit. He's collecting 3 six-figure paychecks without telling any of his 3 bosses. In this episode, we cover the controversial world of overemployment. Is it unethical or absolutely genius? Why you might consider it, how it works, and why your very own coworker might be double dipping without you or your boss noticing. My guest today is Delaney William. He's an ex-overemployed product manager who now teaches tech professionals like you to do the same. He's even helped a data analyst 3x her income, going from $150,000 per year to $480,000 per year by helping her add 2 more remote data jobs without needing to work 50 hours per week. So, should you try it? I don't know. But if you're curious, here's a complete guide to getting started. All right, Delaney, you help people job stack or become overemployed. For those that have never heard of that concept before, can you just give us a quick intro on what that even means?
Yeah, absolutely. So job stacking or overemployment is really just the concept of working 2 jobs at the same time. It's really always remote work. I've yet to meet the person who has 2 in-office jobs that they stack simultaneously. But yeah, it's really just the concept of working multiple jobs. I'm sure we'll get deeper into this, but obviously with AI making work more efficient, just remote work culture growing, there's a lot more opportunities to leverage that efficiency and do what used to take 40 hours in 10, 15, 20, 25 hours a week and be able to earn increased income. Another question that's loosely tied to that is it typically full-time work? Is it part-time work? Is it gig work? Job stacking or overemployment can technically be any of those things, but traditionally it's really focusing on those full-time roles because that's where you really squeeze out the opportunity. Like you're really compensated if you can figure out how to be efficient in those roles that are going to pay you a premium salary.
Okay, so the idea is you have multiple jobs at once. Now, I can see from like a salary perspective how that would be beneficial, right? Like I'd like to get paid more money all the time, but like, do you have to work more too? Like, are you working like 80-hour weeks, or do you find that people can actually do this with keeping their work hours pretty far down?
There's no absolutes here, so it'd be pretty BS for me to say anyone can do it. No matter what jobs you get, it'll work out. I think everyone needs to be prepared with the reality of and let me just share my experience. When I was starting out doing this, I set a hypothesis and a goal. Like I'd love to get to 3 jobs at 500K. I am also cool with accepting a job and starting it and it not fitting that vision and just leaving that job and continue pursuing. Like I knew it was possible, but you could for sure find jobs where it couldn't work, right? For whatever reason, the boss is crazy. It's like a tiny startup and you wear 5 hats and it's just super chaotic. However, like for me, again, just personal experience before we even started teaching others this, I was working 3 full-time product management jobs. I was able to dial it back to about 25 hours a week. And I want to caveat all this by saying this only works if you're a high quality performer. Like if the company's not getting an ROI on you, you'll probably get fired and none of this will work anyway. So I don't encourage anyone to do this at a speed that is faster than your ability to actually produce results. However, I think the people who are skeptical have never really tried or like probably have a default belief system of, okay, I work for a company and that's really all I do. So I give them 40 hours a week and that's the norm. And they've never really thought from another perspective. It's like, I forget the scientific term for it, but it's like you go car shopping for a car that you honestly didn't even really know existed a couple months ago. And now you see it everywhere. Same thing, right? If you start a job with the idea of how do I get the outcomes in as little time as possible, you start seeing so many opportunities to become more efficient and you start noticing more solutions. So we can go deeper into these things later, but the 3 main mechanisms, social capital, and just like, how are you leading inside of a team and building up that social capital that you can have influence of like, hey guys, why do we have this 2-hour meeting? That could just be a Slack update. If you're just a lazy employee, no one will listen to you. But if you're a leader that people respect and you can rally the team around efficiency, totally different dynamic. The sexier options are AI. Where can you embed AI into your workflows to become more efficient? And then lastly, outsourcing, which is like hire someone in a country where you can pay them a few dollars an hour and like you're marginally still taking home 80, 90% of that pay, but you're able to have someone support you kind of as if you were a consultant.
Super interesting. Let's talk about a little bit about like this being real. This is something you did. So I guess we should say this is a data analytics podcast. You are not a data analyst, but you are still somewhat technical. You are a product manager and you did this. Can you just talk a little bit about like where you worked and kind of like what you were making?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my career at United Health Group. So basically the company. There's several sub companies, but that company where the CEO got murdered not so long ago. And there's a lot of sentiment to that where it's like I was there and it was like so slow moving and slow bureaucratic. And honestly, no one really cared about anyone besides just keeping the lights on. So yeah, very quickly I was like, this is not really something where I feel like my creative energy will be rewarded. Yeah, I did a bunch of entrepreneurial things for several years, but eventually when I was ready to start doing this, I was like, okay, I'm earning 80K. After doing some market research, I was like, if I actually tried, I could for sure be making 160 as a senior PM if I positioned myself the right way. So my next offer came in from Estee Lauder as a contractor at 160K annually. So it was like a contract position, but it was 40 hours a week, still like full pay. And then I took a few months, like again, the whole concept of do it in a way that's sustainable. So I took a few months off of my job search, just got that second role dialed in until I felt really comfortable. And then I ended up stacking a third job at another company that operates in the insurance space, like a really big company, making 150. So I went from 80 to 390K in I think it was 11 months time span from the time I started my job search till making that nearly 400.
Okay, that's awesome. I want to hear more about that. But first, like, can a data analyst do this? Have you seen a data analyst do this before in the past?
Yeah, so we put about 140 people through our program over the last year. Our most successful client ever, I'll leave her name out of it. No one wants to be known for these things, but yeah, she blew me out of the water with results. So she is now earning 480K across 3 data roles. She was earning 150 when she came in, and we were able to help her stack 2 more roles on top of that.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. Okay, so let's talk about like how the freak do you even like do this? So this data analyst, for example, and maybe we don't do the data analyst, but like, does this work in like for bigger companies or smaller companies? Like what should people, if they want to be job stacking, like what should they be looking for in a company?
Yeah, great question. So I would personally try to avoid any really small companies for multiple reasons. There's a lot of ethical and moral gray area to all this. And it's important to draw some lines in the sand on both sides, right? It's like there is an element of all this job stacking stuff where it's like, okay, companies don't really have loyalty. So that's one of the ways you can justify doing this of like, if the profitability isn't where it needs to be, companies will let you go. So you should go out and just get yours first. I think that can be true, but I also think the line in the sand is like, okay, I'm not going to go accept an offer from this like tiny startup who is expecting me to completely transform their division. And like, I'm going to make or break this company's success and I got to really get after it. And maybe they're giving me equity too as a result of that. Like, I think that's just a bad play and just, not good for anybody, not even good for you because it's going to be so high stress and there's going to be so much expectation on you. So the flip side of the coin, and not even necessarily on purpose, but the 3 companies that I was working for were all pretty large, all very slow. One of the companies wasn't as large, but because they were just in a pretty old industry being insurance, but slow / old / big companies, I would say are the best ones to job stack in because it's all about just ROI, in my opinion. If you're going to do this, the way to like justify it is they're paying me 150K. Am I giving them their value and what they expect out of me in terms of results, not hours, not input, results. To do that, you really just have to be not the slowest cog in the machine and just do your job effectively, right? If you're in a small company, there might be way more expectation on you. But if you're just part of a bigger system, it's much easier to have autonomy and just kind of stay in the middle of the pack, so to speak.
That makes a lot of sense. I think those larger companies often, at least like in tech, like there's a lot of large like thing companies that have high salaries. I think a lot of large companies, high salaries. I guess small companies can have large salaries too. But I think that's another like way, like these large companies, you can get paid a lot. And a lot of the times you're a cog in the machine. I'm having you on as a guest and I'm really interested to hear what you have to say. I'm skeptical about all of this. This sounds kind of crazy and it sounds like a lot. And it sounds hard to do. So I'm excited to continue the conversation. But I was thinking, okay, could I have done this? And I asked a couple of my friends and I was like, do you think this is possible? I think the people I asked, basically, we both decided that like when we worked for small companies, it wouldn't have been possible. But when we worked for large companies, like I worked for ExxonMobil, I probably could have done it. Like it wasn't really that important when I was at ExxonMobil. There was a time where I wasn't really getting a lot of projects and I had a lot of free time. So I was like doing stuff kind of just for funsies or trying to be innovative and try new things to help the company. And I probably didn't need to do any of those things. To be honest, those things never got me any credibility or any like bonuses or anything useful at the company. Like honestly, it just kind of got me in trouble for coloring outside the lines. So I think I could have pulled it off at ExxonMobil had I even heard of it and had I been interested in doing it. I think I possibly could have done it. So you mentioned like there is some like moral gray area. Let's start with like a really first question, like easy question is like, is this even legal?
Yeah, great question. So broad answer, yes. I want everyone, if you're even remotely interested, to go do your own research. ChatGPT is a great friend, but yeah, just like do deep research, really understand your situation because I don't want to just blindly encourage everyone to go do it because there are definitely risks associated, whether they're big or small for you. But across the board, there's no legislation nationally. I don't believe any states have legislation, but again, just double check your own state, outlawing the concept of working multiple jobs. So from like a legal perspective, blank slate, no. I have seen, so then it's like, okay, what are the outlying scenarios where you could have more risk? There have for sure been situations where, I don't want everyone to get super afraid by this, but there have been experiences where people have gone to jail for working multiple jobs. These are outlier type situations where there was a very serious reason for why they should not have been. Maybe they had security clearance and they were a federal employee. That's most of it. And maybe of like the 3 things I've ever seen of that happening, 2 of them were that. And then I think the third example I've ever seen was like people working for 2 direct competitors and like very clear like trade secrets being passed back and forth. Blank slate across the board, not illegal. You'll take on way, way, way more risk if you work for the government, you have some sort of security clearance, or you're working for direct competitors. That's where you want to be like, you really watch out. And I'll add one more to the mix is if you're like an H-1B visa holder and you're relying on your company for sponsorship, I definitely discourage it. Eventually, the next conversation of after having this conversation is like, okay, risk reward scenario, right? So it's like, if the worst thing that's likely going to happen 99% of the time is I get fired, what is the reward situation if I pull it off? But if your risk is I could go to jail because I'm a federal employee, or I could get, I get sent out of the country because I'm H-1B, then it's definitely a different scenario there. So that's that. I will say that traditionally you are signing a non-compete with your company that says you shouldn't be doing other things with your time. Again, like after really thorough research on this, only 3 encounters ever I've seen it go towards legal. Typically, it's just, you think about it from a company's perspective. If they caught you working multiple jobs, are they like, what do they really have enough to gain that they're going to sue you and spend like tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in court with you for what? Pretty unlikely. So if it ever happens, it's like, okay, you just get fired for now, right? That could change. Like this could become like a bigger problem that companies want to send a message to people, and who knows, like if that happens, then it'll be a different conversation. But as of now, 99% of the time, if you were to get caught, you get fired. From an ethical perspective, I spoke to it a little bit, but I personally, my perspective is like, if we're operating in this echo chamber of like being ideological, it's like, yeah, you shouldn't lie to your employer. You shouldn't be doing multiple things when you're committing your time to this company. But that assumes that the company is operating from that energy as well. And I think it's very, very, very rare to find a company that will go to bat for their employees if they're having a down quarter. If you're working for a mom and pop shop or something, sure. And there will be outlier companies, so I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush, but I think when you're operating in that environment, like, okay, the average stay at a company these days is like maybe 2 years, if not less. And it's just not the same loyalty environment. So my perspective is you really have to put yourself first. And as long as the company's getting an ROI, it can be justified. And it's like, they don't necessarily need to know. And also one more thing on the non-competes, it's like, yeah, you shouldn't be doing anything else with your time, but how many executives are on boards of other companies and like doing other things with their time? So it's like, even that alone, I think is pretty hypocritical in a sense. Everyone should make that own decision. That's how I feel about it. Yeah. And then it really just leads into the risk reward scenario. So like, again, just for me, it's like, okay, the worst thing that happen is I get fired if I'm working so I am job stacking, I get fired from a company. Well, I had 2 jobs and now I still have 1 income. It's like, I'm sure you worked in the corporate environment. I'm sure you've seen people get blindsided with layoffs who were good employees. And in today's job market, it can take at least 6 months for like people go unemployed for a pretty long time these days because it is so hyper competitive. So it's like, you're risking by having 1 job, you're risking like eating $60,000 of your savings because you weren't able to have income for that time while you're searching for a job. So I think a lot of people like might be a bit afraid of job stacking because of risk, and that's valid. You should really think through it. I'm not saying you should do it, but I don't think people realize that it's also pretty risky to just rely on that 1 salary and just blindly trust in that company to provide for you.
It is true that like, especially a lot of big companies, I feel like view their employees as not even like a line in their P&L, right? Like you're just kind of a number. You're like, the more that we hire of this person, the more like we'll make, X more millions of dollars per year. Like that's the return on investment of this. I don't even want to call it an employee, of this like asset to our business, right?
Unit. Yeah, exactly.
That's how they view, like big companies, I think, view employees. And like you said, like there's companies that don't view it that way, but I think a good majority do. And so it's like, okay, well, what if I just viewed like this job or this company as another line in my personal P&L? I think that is one way of looking at it. It's like, okay, if companies aren't going to, treat us well, like why should I be extremely loyal to them? I think that makes a lot of sense. I had a chance to ask my YouTube audience, the 40,000 subscribers I have there. And I said, hey, I have this job stacking expert coming on the podcast. What questions do you have for him? And one of the things that the top voted question, why do you keep taking all the jobs, bro? I mean, I guess it's not you taking the data jobs. It's your student in your program who's taking all the data jobs. But like, I guess like they're like, hey, leave me some jobs. Like from an ethical perspective, I'm curious what you think like to these people who are trying so hard to land one job, like maybe like, what do you say to someone that's taking up like three of those, or maybe two extra, I guess?
No, for sure, man. And it's real. Whenever I break down the modern job market, I always start with how bad is the market? And it's like unemployment rate's actually quite low. It's like 4.2%, which historically is like almost as low as it's ever been. But it's hard to get a job. And why? And it's like this trend is still like probably much smaller than it will become over the next few years. But even if there's 100,000 people in the US job stacking, that's like, and they want like 3 or 4 jobs, that's like an extra almost 500,000 people trying to go out and get these tech jobs essentially when there's not that much supply of it. So I do think it has a really big effect that's not really acknowledged in the broader media. But it is for sure a reality where there's hyper competition and it's no longer like, okay, everyone just fights it. Like I have A jobs and I'll leave the next job for someone else. It's like these people who really understand the game. It's like, it's a winner take all mindset or winner take all experience that's happening now. I don't know, like it might sound a bit brash, but I do think that's just sort of the nature of life in general, that like everything is in a sense just, you know, it's like a bit of natural selection is not the best term for it, but it's essentially just like we live in this competitive environment. Like the companies who are around long enough, like figure out a way to outcompete their competition. And I think the job market's just like, it's the same. It's now been magnified, but I can only speak for myself. But when I went to go start doing this, it's like, okay, I want this outcome. My options are either to sit in the corner and sulk or figure out how to play the game. And like, it sucks. The job market's only going to suck more and more. It's like our clients, we're seeing how they're having to have their first round interviews with like an AI robot more and more and more. And it's becoming more part of this like experience. And it's no fun applying to thousands of jobs a month just to get a couple interviews. But I think it's a reality of like, this is just where we're at. And you either play the game or go start a company or something, because those are really the only two options.
Yeah. And it's also like, if this person's taking, let's say 3 jobs, it's not like you were going to get that one otherwise. Like this person, obviously, if they're getting 3 jobs, they're probably pretty qualified. But I guess maybe you could argue, well, then someone else would have gotten that one and then that one would have opened up and maybe there's like a trickle down. I don't know. But
yeah. And I do think it really also ties back to the concept of like, are you actually able to put out high quality work? Because I think there is an argument for like, okay, if this person can actually figure out how to hold these 3 jobs and do a good enough job that they're like genuinely, like their employers are proud of them and want to keep them on staff, there's an opportunity to be rewarded for that. It like takes it's like higher level thinking, higher level problem solving. There's an equal opposite argument that it's not fair and it is robbing people of jobs for sure. But I think it's also just the reality of open market and how that operates.
I mean, capitalism, I guess. Okay. So like, okay, if we want to do this, how do we actually start doing it? And I want to go to my YouTube post again, because some of the questions that people asked are, what skills are mandatory and which ones don't you need? This person asked, well, what certifications will enhance my resume and boost my chance? This person asked, well, like maybe I know SQL and Tableau, but maybe I should know R and Docker and some extra stuff to land multiple roles. And my reply to those people were, I mean, I'll ask. And so here I am asking, but from my guess, if I had to guess, is like, you have to be qualified for these jobs you're applying for. But I think what separates the people from the people who land multiple jobs versus the people who don't land multiple jobs, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing it's not that they're more qualified than someone else. I think it's probably more on their ability, their career, their job hunting skills, their networking skills and stuff like that. So is that true?
Yeah, great question. And I always love to caveat this with, I have an approach that works. There are also other approaches that work. So just because I'm about to say what I'm going to say doesn't mean you can't use networking or other tactics to get a job. The way I see it, the modern job market, if you're going to go through traditional channels of like, I'm going out there and looking at the jobs that are actually posted, not like going through my network and creating new opportunities, but literally just going after jobs that are posted, 500 people are going to apply to that same data analyst job that you are. And if you're putting yourself in the recruiter's shoes, there's so many facets to this. Like one, there's an algorithm that's going to predetermine if you fall on page 1, 2, 3, or 33 for that recruiter. And that's actually the first thing you have to figure out how to do is be on those first couple pages, because no recruiter is actually going to click to the 30th page to have a conversation with you. So there's a ton of stuff in there that we can speak to. But really, because there are 500 candidates, that recruiter's only going to even entertain the idea of talking to the 30 to 50 people who already seem like complete experts for this role. So again, ethics, morals, going back to it, I would love for it to be a world where you could just say, hey, this is who I am and here's my resume, just blankly. And that can work, but so often it's just not going to work, because unless you can position yourself in that top few percent of what they're looking for, you're going to get probably auto DQ'd by that AI algorithm on the front end, which will DQ like 90% of people. But even if not, you'll likely be like totally at the end of the line and the recruiter won't even get a chance to know that you exist. Because of that, what I've seen is you really have to figure out exactly what job title am I going after. So for your audience, it's like, these are just some examples. I'm not a complete expert in data analyst field, but it's like, do I want to go after data analyst, data engineer, data scientist, the senior version of all those, whatever it might be? Typically, I would say never go above a senior manager level because the volume of opportunities decreases by like a multiple of 10. And it becomes a numbers game. Literally 500 people applying to these jobs. Even with a great resume, your hit rate is going to be just a few percent of the jobs you apply to, you'll get an interview for, is what we see across the board. So, and also it's just like the risk you take on, the visibility. It's like better to have multiple lower level jobs that are easier to be an individual contributor and be a little more low key. By reverse engineering that, then you're able to put forth the resume that when the recruiter sees it, they're like, oh, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So by being a generalist where you have just like 3 or 4 different kind of hodgepodge data type roles, which might be that might have been your experience, but it's really so hyper competitive that you have to re-engineer your experience a little bit to say like, okay, if I'm going after a senior data analyst position, I'm going to reframe some of my past experience. So I come across as I have been, you can have some career progression, but like 3 to 4 to 5 plus years of this exact work listed out on the resume. And then not only in terms of job titles, but also the keywords. So it's like when I mentioned the AI algorithm will auto reject 90% of people or put you way at the back of the line, you have to really understand what keywords are needed. So when you ask like R, Tableau, like what skills, that is so dependent on the exact type of job you want. And the best way to do that is to go do your research. So go find, once you have the job title that you want to go after, then go find 10 of those job postings and pull out all those keywords and put them in a Google Doc and then figure out, you can even use ChatGPT to make sure you get all those keywords in your resume somewhere. And that's at a very, very high level. There's way more to it, but that's what's not only going to get the algorithm to think you're a good fit for these type of roles, but once you're able to do that, like no human's going to know you exist unless you can bypass that algorithm filter. The best way to do that is with keyword research. So to really dial back and answer your question, my potentially controversial opinion is any type of certification is not going to matter because the people they're going to interview for any role under the sun are going to be people that have done this exact thing for 5+ years. So unless you can convey that on your resume, and at that point, no one cares that you're certified in this thing. It's like you either did it in the real world at a high level or I don't even want to talk to you. Definitely be competent in those things so you can put them on your resume. But like when we do resumes, the education section, which would include certifications, is literally 2 lines. It's like education and then like literally 1 line of where you went to school. Cause it's like, that is not going to be the differentiator in today's world. I'd much rather have a long experience section and a long skills section with all those keywords plugged into it.
Okay. So let's say you have me and I'm qualified. Let's say I'm applying for like a data analyst job. I've done this for like a decade. I'm qualified. Let's say you have Avery A and Avery B. They're exactly the same skill wise. Let's say they even have the same resume. What's going to make Avery A like more likely to land more interviews and be able to job stack than Avery B? Like what is Avery A doing differently?
I mean, assuming you guys are just like starting out. So are you assuming they already have really good resumes and those things are already dialed?
We're working, let's just say I'm a data analyst at Exxon back in the day. I'm qualified for my role. And I'm like, maybe I want to get paid some more. And maybe I'm into this job stacking thing. Like, what would I do?
Okay, so let's start with Avery B, the one that's not getting results. So the one that isn't getting results, which is most people that we end up talking to, because this is how the job market was a few years ago. It's like, cool, I put together a resume. It has all the impressive things I've done on it. It communicates my experience. I'm going to go apply to a bunch of jobs. Cool. I've done that. You maybe didn't do all those things. You didn't do those things I just mentioned, where you weren't super clear on the exact job title strategy, the keyword strategy. You haven't really optimized to bypass those AI filters, and you start going to apply to jobs. That's one component. So he didn't do the optimization. Second is volume of applications. So we operate under the assumption that even with a great resume, you're only going to get 1% interview response rate of all the jobs you apply to. And that might end up being low, but I'd rather undershoot and over deliver. And even though that sounds crazy and impossible for most people working a full-time job, like how am I going to apply to, what is that, like 100 jobs a day, every work day throughout the month? That sounds really overwhelming for most people. Flipping over to Avery A, he would have done all that optimization stuff, but he also would figure out how to have a system. And we do this for people, but you can also figure out how to do it yourself on different degrees of complexity. But it's how do I have a system that's really making sure I get out tons of applications, assuming I'll get 1 interview for every 100 jobs I apply to. So that can be easy applies. We like to do a mix of long form applications. Obviously, there's pros and cons to both. Long forms take longer, but there's less competition when you're out on company websites. Easy applies are easier. You can get way more volume, but there's way more competition. We really do find like once you've beaten the algorithm or you've really gotten a place where the algorithm likes your resume and will put you at the front of the line, the easy applies actually have a really good return because you're just able to skip a lot of people in line on those application platforms. But regardless, we like to use both of those platforms. We also have an in-house automation tool that can automate the process of applying on LinkedIn, Indeed, and ZipRecruiter. So that's like the far end of the spectrum. But for the average person who maybe doesn't have the ability to invest in this stuff, it's like carve out at least an hour or two a day to be applying and do a mix of long form and easy apply applications. There's a plugin called Simplify it's basically a Chrome plugin, like those plugins that save your credit card information. So it's easy. Same thing for your job application process. So even on those long form applications, it'll fill it out really quickly for you. And also when you're filtering for jobs to apply to, start off with applying to anything that has been posted in the last 24 hours. Because if you can be within the first like 50 to 100 applicants, your chances of someone seeing you and talking to you are going to be way higher. So to really close the loop on that, Avery A would focus on how do I make sure the algorithm loves me and I'm a top 5% candidate, because that'll just shoot your response rate through the roof compared to Avery B. And then really focusing on volume. And if you assume one interview for every 100 jobs I apply to, how do I just keep bumping that number up to like 2,000 job applications per month? That's a recipe. Like that might sound intense and over the top, but that's for sure. Like it's really hard to not have success if you're having at least 10 or 20 interviews a month. It's almost just, even if you're not great at interviewing, you're struggling with that process, it's kind of just a matter of time till you land something. Yeah, those are the main three components that we see.
That's exactly what I was trying to get to, is like, once you're qualified, like getting more qualified isn't what's going to separate you from, maybe I was in a $100,000 job, Avery B was $100,000. And now after Avery A doing this, maybe I'm at $350,000. The difference between $350,000 and $100,000 isn't that, I went out and got certified in one other skill, or that like I got better at my skills, because once you're qualified, you're qualified, right? And even adding, maybe you added one more qualification, that's not necessarily the difference maker. The difference maker that you just said is like, no, I'm going to like 100x your output basically through automation. And it's like, and really that's like a job hunting technique, although it is kind of a crazy one, right? It is a job hunting technique. And that's what separates the $350,000 data analyst to $100,000 data analyst is really the skills could be the exact same. Heck, even Avery B could be a better data analyst than Avery A, but like
100%.
If you're qualified, you're qualified. And at that point, it's kind of like a numbers game slash it's just like, it's math. It's like, if you're going to, the average, I think it's called like an applicant ratio, or interview ratio, the like number of times you get interviewed for the number of times you send an application is like, the average is like, I don't know, 5% or something like that. So it's like, for every 100 applications you send, you're going to get 5 interviews. And then you probably have some sort of an interview percentage as well. Maybe it's for every first interview you have, you'll end up landing, I don't know, 1 out of 6 of those jobs maybe. And so it's like, okay, if I want to get more offers, like the easiest thing is just increase the number of applications I sent out.
Exactly. Yep. 100%.
So anyways, to everyone on the YouTube channel who left these questions of like, what skills do I need, or what, certificates do I need? It's like, okay, once you're qualified, it doesn't really matter. It's just like your output.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. But it's also valid to be like just double check, like look at these job postings. Maybe you'll notice a new framework or tool or skill set that you don't have. You're like, oh, I'm actually noticing this is a trend. It might be worth filling those gaps.
And for the record, people, guess what? You can just put stuff on your resume, even if you don't know it. Like you can get in trouble when you get to the interview, but at least you're in the interview at that point. Like
that's what I always say. Yeah, no, I'm on the same thing. It's like, do what you got to do to get your foot in the door. That's the hardest part. Then figure out how to justify it. Like that's as long as you can, if you think you can learn the skill within like 10 hours, if you had to just be competent, put it on your resume. You'll figure it out later.
And yeah, one time there was a project that required D3 in JavaScript. I didn't know D3 at all. I got the job. I learned it. Like I figured it out. But like you get in the interview and you just cram right beforehand and you'll be fine. And if you're not fine, well, guess what? At least you got the interview. Because if you wouldn't have put on your resume, you wouldn't have gotten the interview. So you got at least one step closer. Okay, so let's say Avery A does this. I do mass application. I first have a good resume. I do mass applications. I start to get interviews. Let's say I start to land these roles. We talked about like you have to pretty much be remote. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard. You kind of hinted at this earlier, but like, what am I doing? Like the question on YouTube was, how can you do justice to the requirements of each job and to yourself if you're juggling multiple? Like, what tools do we have at our hands to actually pull this off? Like I have 2 full-time jobs. Like, how the heck am I going to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. So we usually do this as like a side-by-side discovery with our clients. It would be kind of ridiculous for me to say, we know exactly how to do it, because everyone's job is so different, the things they are responsible for in their role. are going to be different. And my corporate experience has only ever been in product management. So for me to say, I know exactly what you need to do in your data analyst role to work them simultaneously would be very inauthentic. So I think I go to a few things. So one is for sure those 3 pillars that I mentioned before. So before we even look at the tools and like the sexy, like what AI could you deploy to make your coding, your data analyst role easier, I would really like the least sexy but most effective one is just your social capital and your EQ and your leadership in that role. And as you like, I wouldn't even start pursuing a second job until you've really dialed that first job into like 20 hours ish per week. If that's really, really hard for you, you may actually want to consider trying to find a job that you could just replace this one if it's a non-starter, right? So some people, they're going to be totally against this whole concept because, you know, even their current role is hard, and that's super valid and justifiable. So for people who really do want to pursue it, it's just finding that right work environment and really building that leadership, social capital, and really just rallying everyone around efficiency. You're not coming in and saying, hey guys, like you don't want to give the vibe of I'm lazy, I don't want to be at meetings, but everyone can get behind efficiency. And especially in bigger companies, there's usually so much room for efficiency. So if you can if you can just understand, like, I won't pretend to be an expert in terms of ways of working within the data field, but you could probably look at the way people are doing things and make recommendations for how you could carve off 5 or 10 hours per week of things that are happening just because they're not as efficient as they could otherwise be. If you're a team leader, obviously more things like delegation and empowering the people around you. One of my roles as a product manager, I, for like 2 years, did literally nothing because just everyone around me was empowered to just do things, and they were bought into the role and they enjoyed it. So those are options. When it comes to like with our data analyst client specifically that I just mentioned earlier, she took on 3 roles. When we got to this point where she's like, okay, I'm working these jobs, I'm like kind of worried if I'm actually gonna be able to do these together. You know, we just spent an hour together where she mapped out first and foremost, like what am I being really clear on, like where is your time being allocated? Because we have usually a general sense, but it's like really map out in a week, where are you putting your time? What type of projects were you focused on? And even something as simple as using a basic LLM to just kind of plug that in and say, hey, these are the things I'm doing. Are you aware of any AI tools, like AI agents, like any other ways I can make this workflow more efficient? Really relying on AI to help you find out if there's any AI tools or functions that would allow you to free up time. And again, I can speak to the product manager, but almost everything in the product manager world was just basically turning words into other words. So that was pretty easy to do with ChatGPT and building a custom GPT that was trained on company, just basically like all of my onboarding documentation. I just uploaded it into a custom GPT that would write like project, feature requirements and whatnot for me, or like quarterly goals and whatever. So those are effective options. And then sometimes and it's really about looking at each of these tasks that we have and what would be the right approach. So like of those 3 pillars, outsourcing, AI, or EQ, what would make the most sense to tackle this problem? And you can test and try things. Like another option, something I did, the woman who's now the COO of our company, I hired her at $4 an hour like 3 years ago to be my assistant to help me do my product management work because she had done some of that before. So she, back then, for me, just an example of like how I utilized her is I had to do a monthly competitive analysis PowerPoint. So I would have her do that for me, turn it over to me, I'd present it to the team, like analysis of feedback. So like all our App Store reviews, thousands of reviews, she would assess that, put a PowerPoint together, save me like 3 hours a week that I didn't have to do those things. So there are times and places where that type of stuff makes more sense. I want to asterisk that can come with risk because your company definitely doesn't want you outsourcing that work to other people. So you have to be like, kind of get a pulse on that of, is this something I'm willing to do? I was willing to do it. That doesn't mean you should, but it saved me a lot of time and is always a viable option. And it's really like, usually I make that decision of like, okay, would an AI do this way faster with way less guidance? Cool, I'll do that. If this is something that for whatever reason, it would be harder for AI to do, but also if I teach this person to do it, like, am I going to spend more time explaining it to them than it will take me to just do it myself? So I'm thinking about those type of things as well to determine, because then there were always things that were just for me to do. Cause I realized like, AI can't really do this well. It's not even worth trying to get this other person to do it because they won't understand the industry as much. And that should be stuff that's still on my plate. So there will always still be work to do typically, but it's just constantly assessing like, what could you ship off to other functions?
Well, it's interesting because, and I always get nervous just talking about my ex-employer, Exxon. I love you, but I'll use you as an example. Like Exxon was definitely offshoring my role to places like India and other offshore places. So it's like, if they're going to do it, like why, just to play devil's advocate here, this is one way you could think about it, not the only way, but like if they're going to ship it to someone else to do it cheaper, like why can't I do that and keep the delta? Like they're gonna do it otherwise, right? So like, why not get started on that? And then in terms of like AI, it's funny because I haven't worked. I left my job in 2021, and like ChatGPT wasn't a thing yet, so LLMs were, you had heard about them, but you hadn't really used one yet. And so now it's just so funny because if I could take 2025 Avery and go back to like 2020 Avery, like I would be fast in all of like all of my coding. Like I wrote a lot of Python code and it's like I would have written that a lot faster now, like probably 5 times faster because, AI is never going to be as good of a data analyst as me. That's my belief. But like it can get 50% of the way there. And then I only have 50% of the project to do. And so I can see how AI would be really powerful, especially if you maybe work for an older industry where they're like not using AI and stuff like that. So that makes a lot of sense. So, okay, the three things that you can do when you're in the job to balance all this is one, just like have people like you, like be like a good leader, be like, hey, yeah, let's try to be efficient, like try to get rid of meetings if you don't need them. Two is to use AI to do things that maybe you used to do by hand. And three is to delegate to others and have them do stuff for you, basically. And those are the three pillars then.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Okay. I can see how it's possible. I can see the vision of it all. It sounds scary still, but I like what you said. You're like, okay, you're not even doing this until you're in a role and you're not job stacking in the beginning. You're just trying to get to like 25 hours a week. That's your starting point. And then once you're there, then you can start thinking about job stacking. That actually reminds me, a really good book that kind of talks about this. That's like maybe almost 20 years old is 4 Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And he talks about a lot of similar things of like, okay, if you want to like have financial freedom in your life, figure out how to start working remotely. Once you're working remotely, like, figure out how to get like less on your schedule. And he talks about some of the delegation to outsourcing stuff. So anyways, that's just kind of the key is like before you even dabble into this, that's kind of what you have to be thinking about. Now, let's talk about what you do. So if I'm watching or listening to this and I'm like, okay, I'm a data analyst, I have experience and I want to get down to, or like, let's just say I want to earn more money. Like, do I start talking to you to try to get to 25 hours a week? Do I start talking to you once I'm in a role that's at 25 hours a week? Like what do you do and how do you help people?
Yeah, I would say it's the right time to engage with us, or at least like book a call with us if you're ready to really make this a reality. If you're still in like that, I don't even know if this is for me thing, definitely just, we have some good YouTube content, just like, figure that out if you even want to pursue it, right? Zero pressure. But what I would say is it all takes time. Like I'd much rather have someone get started on the process with a lot of runway and time. So even if you're like, yeah, I know I can get into 20 to 25 hours a week of work at this role, but it'll take me a little time to just like get those building blocks in place, then I think it's the right time to engage with us because getting your resume out there, building momentum, that stuff can take time. So both can happen at the same time, right? Like we don't want you to be like, okay, I'm ready. And then you're like waiting a month or two to get the algorithm really hitting the right way to start getting interviews coming in. So yeah, if you're ready and you feel confident in it, we'd be happy to have a conversation to see if it even makes sense to support you.
Okay, awesome, Delaney. Well, we'll make sure we have all of your social links down below so that people can get in touch with you. And if you're watching and you're listening and you're interested in this, reach out to me because I'd just love to. It's hard to talk to people who are interested and who are doing in this because they kind of want to keep it on the DL. So it'd be fun.
Yeah, for sure. You have to be like graduated from it to talk about it openly.
Yeah, even then, like, I mean, you don't want to get. It's funny though because like. If the company's not happy with your performance, how you're doing, they should get rid of you, right? Like that, I think that's fair. It's like, if you're not performing up to their standards, they should get rid of you. But if you are performing up to their standards and they find out that you're also hitting someone else's performance standards, I mean, to be honest, they're gonna fire you for sure. But like, they should theoretically be okay with it because you're doing everything that they're asking and they're happy with your output. But all of a sudden they figure out that you're doing more than that and they're not.
My take, not that I know that this is true or not, I really think that will shift over time. So, and you're clearly an entrepreneur as well, but like what I see in the entrepreneur community, like these smaller, there's still like companies that do really well, but they're smaller, more like modern thinking. Like almost all my employees are fractional and they do other things. Maybe at least like 80% of them. And we operate from that model of like, as long as you're doing your thing, great. So many companies, especially as they're growing, will rely on consulting or agencies to run business functions. And that's like normal, but it doesn't really translate to the traditional 9-to-5 role.
That's actually, I thought the same thing, especially when I quit my job and I started doing like freelancing. I was like, this is awesome. And I was like, I picture a future where we're all just freelancers and we just freelance for maybe multiple companies. And maybe one day we would freelance for one company. One time we freelance for another company. And so I was like, this is the future. And so I was like, how do I think I'm early on this. How do I invest in this? Like, how can I call my shot? Right. And so I bought a bunch of Fiverr and Upwork stock because I was like, these are freelancing companies that are really good. Fiverr's down 45% in the past 5 years, and Upwork is up 25% in the last 5 years. But
Nice.
also,
Yeah, Fiverr had they tanked a little bit.
yeah, it tanked big time. And even Upwork, like back in 2021, it was $60 and now it's $17. So it's fallen quite a bit too. So we're not quite at that future yet.
Yeah.
But if you guys want to hop in and you guys are like, yes, I want to be a modern worker and I want a job stack, I want to be overemployed, and I want to make a lot of money so that way when the layoff inevitably happens, my family's going to be taken care of. Then this is a good option for you. And Delaney's one of the only people that I've seen talk about this openly on the internet. So he'd be a good resource.
Appreciate it, Avery.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for coming on, Delaney.
Yeah, of course. It's been a fun time.